Hi, I'm Matt Bacon, and this is my point 4 cents.
I'm Dustin Boyer.
I'm Maddie Elise.
And I'm Andrew Southworth, and today we're going to be talking about labels moving away from TikTok virality and how to not get scammed from marketing companies and artist and label service companies. I also had an awesome interview with Sam Dubof, the global head of marketing and policy over at Spotify, where we talk about how Spotify actually pays artists, how to actually use Spotify Discovery Mode, in his own words, and a whole bunch more.
And you've probably noticed today our fourth is Maddie Elise, and she is the brilliant mind behind Shark Attack, a marketing and record label service. Is that how to describe your business?
That works.
Sure. Maddie, honestly though, Maddie's a badass. I go to her all the time to not only understand great marketing, but to also understand what's happening out in LA in the music scene, in the music industry scene. She always seems to have everybody's number and talk to everybody. So it's really cool to have you here, Maddie, even though you probably have about 1,000 NDAs.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited.
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to get into today, of course, South by Southwest happened this past week. And what I'm hearing from a lot of the conversations, even though I'm not there, a lot of people who go there like to spread news about the gossip. And one of the biggest things they're talking about is the real push away from discovering and creating and developing acts based off of TikTok and Instagram virality. That viral moments are less frequent and they're not a good indicator of longevity when it comes to artists. Instead, everything from the labels down to smaller artists, they are focused on how can they create super fans. Now, I think for the four of us, this is something that we've been hearing forever and something that we've been implementing with our artists. And I think when it gets to South by, that's when you're like, okay, they're very serious about it. But first, I just want to kind of breach the subject of, are we all feeling that too? Is anybody breaking any acts on TikTok lately?
People are breaking acts on TikTok, but it's not through viral. It's not purely through viral content. Maybe something goes viral and then that feeds back to a larger universe of things, right? But I don't think that there's that thing of oh, this TikTok got 50 million views, now they're getting a record deal.
Well, I think that's partially gone away. Labels still have all that proprietary software that tells you when someone's going viral. I get hit up anytime I have an artist go viral, especially if they're independent. We get an email from at least 2 or 3 A&R that's like, "Hey, let's have a meeting." And it's always a junior A&R, and they always cancel 5 minutes before the meeting. It's a part of the process. You go through that wrap. But I do think virality is still important. But I would agree with you, no one is breaking from it.
On the side of people focusing on super fans, it feels like there's been a lot of news over the last year about this various major record label investing in this super fan platform, or even on Spotify, they've added the segments feature where you can see the difference between, there's a big focus on active listeners now, which is great, and also breaking that down into low, medium, and super listeners on the platform. And so they're trying to kind of show you how your marketing efforts gauge, not just get you monthly listeners, but active listeners. And it feels like that's been the focus on a lot of investments into companies too.
Well, I think that people have had enough of I still always feel that a lot of this stuff kind of just ends up with heads in the door at shows, and I feel enough promoters have been scammed enough time, not scammed, but have overpaid enough times on celebrity TikTokers or Instagram people. There was a period where I think we were all hearing those stories. Once every couple weeks, one of our promoter friends got lost their ass on someone with 5 million Instagram followers. And it's
I don't think promoters have been burned enough though, because I still hear from agents who are hey, go hire them because promoters want to see this artist in their feed all the time. That's still the thing that to them translates, even though it really doesn't, to ticket sales. So it's still important, but I don't think it's not an indicator to sell tickets. It's not a correlation. Now, sometimes it may happen, but yeah.
Has it ever been an indicator? Because I can remember years ago when we first started working together, there was a band that had 3 million monthlies and couldn't sell 200 tickets in their hometown.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I always feel like that it was a facade. Like, it never was true that just because you were having a moment that it would equal longevity. Coincidentally, it could if you had a great marketing team, or you could create a brand that would drive those people. And I think when that would happen, it would lull everybody into this false sense of like, oh, there's something real happening here. But then there's so many, I mean, I can think of a dozen different situations where a sound is blowing up and everybody's talking about it. And then a year later, that artist is just nowhere. It just doesn't, it was the sound that mattered, not the artist. And they couldn't connect those dots.
A lot of people may have noticed that over the last, like, I don't know, year or maybe even two, I've like made like not a ton, but like more content on like growing your email list or free plus shipping and handling things. We're talking about vinyl sales and stuff, and we talked about it on the podcast. And that's because like kind of behind the scenes, I've been hedging my bets in that like I think the streaming thing's always going to be super important because that's how you find your people. But I think more industry people are adopting the like indie growth tactics of like focusing on actual fans. And so by like, you know, we like help people with their free plus shipping and handling funnels and stuff like that. And like that's a super indie tactic to do. But I'll have like artists who normally would not do that wanting to try that some stuff like that, like starting an email or SMS list, or be like, let's do a free plus shipping and handling funnel, which like usually the bigger artists are not. They just want to do like all streaming, stuff like that. So I feel like it's getting more popular, and you hear more people asking about Bandcamp and more people wanting to do vinyl. And I don't know. I think there's a big trend of people kind of not. I don't know how to describe it, but like going offline a bit more in a way, and wanting like real world things that they can touch.
Do you think that is a side effect of AI and everything that's going on in that space that's pushing over more here?
I think so.
Like, people don't know what's real. Is this virality even real? I mean, and fans they're smart. They understand that marketing companies are running fan accounts. And, you know, we don't try to hide it. You know, our goal is to create interest and then create organic content, UGC being made. But I think when you hear this side of the industry talk about it and people are like, man, I don't know what's real. Do I like this song? They really just want to engage with the artist. And you just, you know, you're only interested in buying a ticket when you get that level. I am sort of curious, though, and Maddie, maybe you have more experience of this. I feel like for the labels, it's less about development, and it's more about the fact that we've reached the ceiling. Like, I think the report that just came out on streaming sales, streaming has gone up 3% year over year. But inflation was 2.7, meaning that arguably it really hasn't gone up. We haven't increased the market for what streaming is doing. And I feel like these labels who are just thinking about the entire industry, they feel like they've reached the maximum. And they're like, you know, we live in capitalism, so they're like, how do we make more value, more money? And I think they're looking at this idea, and we've talked about this, how fans who want to spend $10 or $1,000 are all getting squished down to $10. There is money on the table through these whales, and the labels are seeing artists and their management teams be able to figure out how to make money off of that, and the label's getting cut out. So I feel like a lot of this push from the label is, how do we get involved in this? And Maddie, I'm curious if you've had any of these conversations with your label partners.
I've had lots of these conversations. I would tell you, in my experience, the smart labels are actually being smart, and they're trying to figure out how to get involved. But a lot of them see the price tag of like what it costs to actually build a fan base, to build that data, and they go, oh, no, we can't spend that. But let me spend $100,000 on a music video. But no, we're not going to spend money on actual marketing. And I see that all the time.
I think part of it too, like part of why I have kind of turned so much of our company into like an ad agency is like, and I don't always know how you do it, Dustin, because like I just find it really fucking frustrating building out cool marketing plans for people for them to like not execute on or like do in the lamest way possible. So I was like, fuck it, we're just gonna do the math stuff. And I would not be surprised.
Do all the technical, boring stuff they don't want to do.
I would not be surprised.
I know what you mean.
Like if there's certain labels who feel the same way, because because I've even had this with labels trying to pitch like high level marketing ideas, and it's like, you are correct, that would work, but getting them to execute on that is impossible. And it's like,
yes,
I think that sometimes artists will frequently, what I've found is artists, after they start to make a living off their music, will kind of stop experimenting with stuff because it's like, fuck it, I got the goal. Like, I don't want to, like, this is just what I got to do. And which I think is most people once they get a stable income in their favorite job. And I also think that, yeah, like I know you do good work, Maddie, and I think labels know you do good work, but I think they're afraid of the variance of people like not executing.
Oh, of course, and it's definitely partially that. It's also somewhat on the artist. And, I've had artists, we've had incredible marketing plans that are super fun to try to execute, and the artist is lazy and is like, I don't want to do it. Do it for me. And if they can't do it for you, I mean, we talk about this all the time. Talking with your fans, being one-on-one with your fans, even when it's not really one-on-one, but it feels one-on-one, is the best way to grow a fan base, But most artists don't want to put the work in, which blows my mind because that, to me, that's kind of the coolest part about being an artist, is to see how you affect someone's lives.
Do you think, and maybe you've heard this from the labels you've talked to, that more of them are going to get into like 360 deals again, or if not 360, be like, we'll help you develop this super fandom part of your fan base, but because we're going to help you, provide you the resources and tools to do it, we're going to take a 25 or 50 or whatever % cut of it.
I would expect that to happen. I haven't seen it happen so far. I've actually seen the opposite, where they're getting away from the 360s more. But I think I actually, Dustin, what you said, the fact that had South by it's very telling. And let's see what happens in the next couple of months, because those conversations are happening. We'll see.
But they have to shift the way that they operate internally if they want to make this a big part of how they make money, because they really don't care about the technical side of running funnels. And you could just look at every label has a relationship with a big advertiser like Gupta, right? Like most labels, especially the majors, do not have internal advertising teams. They have marketing coordinators who put together, and directors who put together strategies and hand those ads off to Gupta. And Gupta's like a big at scale advertising firm. You just send them what you want them to run. They run it and then they report. Nobody in that process actually cares about how those ads perform. Yeah. And when you have that mentality, how are you supposed to build out a systematic funnel? That might be actually why they're buying these companies, because they're not looking to build out complex, interesting marketing teams, which is, I think, what they should do. They're looking for quick solutions that they can implement through these SaaS programs, these apps that will just produce money. Basically, like produce sales. That's what they're hoping for. And I don't think they're going to get it. I think like they're thinking about running individual businesses at scale just doesn't work. That's why management companies are better at doing this sort of stuff.
Well, what if, let's say, like Universal bought Even, that new Bandcamp?
No, but they didn't. That's what they Even just got a distro deal, essentially. Yeah. They just essentially became like a JV through Universal. They didn't buy Even. No,
wait. I didn't even know they were. I'm saying if they did they partner with Universal? Yes. I didn't think they were. I thought they were a completely independent company that had no ties to any label.
They are. Even cut a deal with Universal to distro through Universal, and a lot of people read it as like Universal bought Even, and Even was like, no. Yeah. We're still an independent. We're just distroing.
So my hypothetical is like, let's say Universal fully bought Even, and Even takes, I don't know, 10. I think it's 15%. It's like a Bandcamp thing. They take like 15% of every sale, and then now Universal starts telling all their artists, before you release on streaming, you're going to debut your record on Even a month early so your super fans can buy it. And then and we're not even going to take anything extra as part of your label deal except the built-in 15% cut that's part of using Even. So it's like, and they're getting it from all the indie artists, so it allows them to get more indie market share while also taking more super fan money from their existing roster. So they buy the tech, and then they have their artists use the tech and then like they kind of get to double dip in a way.
The use part is the problem. Who's using it? Is it the label? Is the label setting it up? Who's creating the marketing funnel? What's the lead magnet, right? Like yes, in theory that sounds great, but the work it takes to collect that data is the part where everybody gets hung up on, because that work is expensive. It's the reason why they don't hire
It's going
companies
to be
like
like
ours
the
to do
label
it.
being like, just go post more, and then the artist like gets mad, and then they complain about it on social media.
I mean, they are
That's probably
posting
what's going
more.
to happen. Is like, just go use even or whatever, and then it just ends up flopping because they didn't give them the support they need to actually like execute.
Yeah. That to me is the issue. But they want to scale their revenue, so you can't. They want their cake and eat it too. It feels like a lot, where it's like, how do we not spend money on this and then make more money? And it's just such, in comparison to streaming, it's such a huge. And not for nothing, like there are smart people that work at labels, a lot of smart people, but a lot of who they hire isn't always designed to create new initiatives. Like there's not a lot of entrepreneurial spirit at the label.
but
So maybe I'm wrong there, Maddie. But well, I'm curious, Maddie. Is that kind of rude to say?
No, I don't think it's rude to say it. There's incredible people that work at labels. That's not the question. Isn't that you just got to remember they all have bosses, and their bosses have bosses. So you have to play the game, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had to turn an eye on a project that I've been like, yeah, this could be amazing if we just did this, but oh, okay, we can't. Okay, so let's just focus over here. I mean, we talked about this back when we were talking about botting. I mean, the reason labels were botting at certain points is because they didn't want to get screamed at. So they started hiring these kids for no money, getting them 1 million streams, and then all of a sudden all these songs started getting taken down. And you're like, what's happening? It's like, well, I met my numbers. It's fine. You know?
Yeah, the goal is to not piss off their boss and not get fired. In an industry where people are getting fired
Left
a lot.
and right.
Yeah. What were you going to say there, Matt?
I've had
sorry.
people like hire me for a consulting call with their own money because they needed help with campaigns they were running at Universal.
Oh yeah.
Because like
that's kind of
they're
cool.
Like, it was cool. It was very cool for me. I was like, this is honestly like kind of a badass seal of approval.
Yeah.
But the person was like, I don't know what to do, and they wouldn't approve me to like pay for this, so I just paid for this call out of pocket. And they just needed like extra set of eyes in their thing. And I was like, that's crazy that like you're working for like one of the big 3 major labels, and you're like you like can't get help on running campaigns for.
I don't think they know,
that
man.
showed me there were a lot of passionate people there too, because he's like, I just want this to do well. I believe in this artist, and like I can't get more money, I can't get more help, so I got to make it work.
I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the next coming months, because jobs are getting thinner and thinner, and it's becoming more and more competitive. And so you have to find different ways to get ahead and different ways to edge.
Yeah.
So
I also think, like, if we're being honest, I was talking about this with someone today about like the economics of what we do versus what a lot of label salaries are, and like I was explaining to someone like what the ad stuff that we do is not. It's hard and it requires like knowing stuff, but it's not like rocket science, right? But like very few people at record labels actually have a meaningful grasp around this stuff. And the reason for that is not because they're bad people or whatever. It's because the type of person who is going to spend the time to like properly learn all the ad shit and like be the fucking king of that is typically the type of person who will then realize, oh wait, I could just get a bunch of clients to do this and not get paid less by the label. Like, you know, because like label salaries are not great usually. And like PR had this realization about 10 years ago where like a lot of labels stopped having in-house PR because like all the PR people were like, I'll do all your releases, but I can do like 20 other things. If you have it in you to become a killer, then you're just going to go start your own thing.
Or you'll work for like one of us, working on like something that you have more personal agency over, and you can maybe work from home, or you're flexible. Like, you're not part of like this giant number crunching machine. And there's a lot of cool things working at a label. Like, that must be really cool from a different perspective of seeing how the industry works and all that. But it's completely different working for like, you're like on the outside of it, and you're getting to work on projects you maybe care more about, and it's a different thing.
I think the cool thing about working in a label is the reach that you get, right? So if I wanna hit up Spotify will take my call when I work with a label. When I'm working independently, unless I have a friend there, I can't get a hold of them. It's the same with all of those other platforms. Also, the invites you get, right? I get invited to a lot of industry things because I work with a label. When I'm not working with said label, I don't get those invites. It's all about that.
I snuck into a Meta. Meta has their like label things that they have going on, and I forget how I got in, but I'm always sneaky about these things. And I got in, and my goal it was label relations. So it wasn't just advertising; it was like Facebook's label relations. All the label people were there in Nashville, and I got in, and I approached one of the people after their presentation, and I was like, "Love to meet you. What label are you at?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm with an agency." And he's like, "Nope, can't talk to you." He said it to me and walked away, and I was like, "Oh, okay." I did not anticipate, like, completely cut me out. It's like this guy got yelled at one point in time. He must have got yelled at because the way he cut me out was so matter of fact. It was honestly hilarious. I was like, okay, they're dead. Maddie, you're dead right. Like, it's funny where we get tuned out. In fact, we only hear about stuff through our label partners because they forward stuff to us, and they're like, can you like translate this? I don't know what they're talking. Like, I don't know what TikTok is saying here, and that's how we learn about shit.
Because everything they're saying is bullshit, and they know the agencies will call them out on it, but the labels don't know anybody?
I actually I don't know.
Oh, you think so?
I actually agree with you, Andrew. I think so much of it is. Oh, I'm going to try to say this in an appropriate way.
That's the entire show. That's the entire show, Maddie.
Only broke artists watch this, anyways.
I did say that. I'm trying to. Yes, Andrew, I would agree with you. A lot of them are just inflating and BSing everything that they're saying. I listen to them and I go, why are you talking above everyone's head, thinking you're better than everyone, when you could literally boil it down to this and it would make exponentially more sense. Yes, I would agree with you. I don't think it's all that, but I think 90% of it is, like, that high of a percentage.
Because the reason I thought of it is because, like, when you go on Meta, they're like, turn on Advantage Plus audiences, turn on Advantage Plus placements. Oh, you should turn on this, reach people outside of this zip code, even though you only want to target. Like, there's all these automatic things they recommend for, like, generic e-com, and that gets pushed on you, even though they know you're not doing that. And so I have to imagine that the advice they're going to labels is like, run an awareness ad and then retarget the people doing that and then retarget people.
It just feels like every single time I've done after the first like year of doing Meta ads, every single time that I've done like a support call with Meta, it's like, I know more than you. Please just fix this, because I know more than them, and that's also because Meta is, like, from what I understand, a bad place to work, and I don't get the impression that a lot of these people have had their job for more than 6 months.
I mean, they especially don't understand it for music. Like, 90% of what they know applies to, like, actual product branding and not services like ours. Bespoke services need more customized and unique marketing strategies. So when they hit us up about artists, and really, artists are even more unique than that, right? They're even a more unique product. They just don't understand it, and I don't blame them necessarily. But I do find it interesting because many of their label relations people don't really communicate with their advertising people. And so I'm like, you guys, like, a lot of times I'm not even sure what the label relationship person does at Facebook and TikTok, because it's not like they have a lot of great programs. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe I just don't hear about the programs.
They have some cool programs. Meta, I get cool programs through Meta and TikTok every once in a while, but they do.
Like what? I'm curious, because I've never heard of anything.
I mean, oh God, I'm trying to think of the last one.
Putting you on the spot. Now remember.
I feel like TikTok was literally, they were pulling artists that were bubbling, and they were like, hey, if you have an artist that's bubbling, we're going to take you and put you into basically a boot camp. I had a couple artists do that a couple times where they literally put all these kids into a boot camp and they taught them how the algorithm works, how to push their content out more. Stuff like that. That's kind of fun.
I mean, that is cool. I wish I've never heard of stuff like that.
But
so I wish I did.
I wasn't aware Meta did that.
Meta, not so much. Meta does occasionally do things, especially on the Instagram side of it.
I guess that's true.
I mean, I not typically on the Facebook side of it. Funny enough, at least I haven't seen it on the Facebook side of Meta.
That's because you work with bands under 40.
I saw a thing, not from the music side, but from like people talking about the content creator side, like how to make it or how to get good organic reach from Facebook.
Yep.
And they were talking about how like Facebook was recommending that they post like a minimum of 5 times a day or something, and they had to get like a 15 reels a week. Like just the volume output was crazy, and they were talking about how like this is the point where Facebook starts rewarding your organic content efforts. And I think the whole point of their post was that they weren't going to post on Facebook anymore because it wasn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
There was an internal like meeting where they were like, "This is what you have to do if you want to get reach on our platform."
Which it's pretty much like live, eat, and breathe our platform, please. And
I know some people who accidentally do good on there because they're genre. Like they'll post on TikTok, Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, and YouTube Shorts, and then they're by far their best is Facebook Reels. But they're doing like guitar covers of 80s songs and doing guitar solos and stuff.
They're appeasing the audiences there. I will say this, like circling back to the topic of just this idea of
what are we talking about?
And I wanted this to be a broader conversation, but I do think, though, that as marketers, we've known this for a while. We've all been pushing our artists to build out their own unique walled garden, if you will, a place that they can communicate with their fans. And the fact that labels are seeing it and they're seeing the money in it. I mean, hell, I've got one artist who they got like 200,000 or 300,000 monthly listeners, but they can sell out, a 2,500 cap room like it's no problem because they have a very good community in walled garden where they can sell things. You can get to your goal of a sustainable career much quicker than you think you can. You don't need millions of listeners.
Sam, if you only had 1 minute to give music artists the best advice you possibly could, what would you say? 1 minute on the clock.
Oh, wow. A timer. This is real. I'd have to say best advice I'd give is to get informed, get educated, and really know the ins and outs of the business. In my role, I talk to artists all the time. And even working at Spotify, there's new parts of the industry I learn about every day. It's incredibly complicated. You definitely can't believe everything you hear online. And my best advice to artists is if you want to take control of your career, you have to know your stuff. So, look at your royalty statements, look at the, deals you have with your manager, your label, your lawyer, look at platforms like Spotify and make sure you understand everything that we're doing, understand how the ad platforms work, understand how your royalties are generated, and really make sure you get the details of it, because if you don't know those things, you're not set up to make the best decisions that you can and help take your modern career to the next level. I think I was 5 seconds over.
Damn. You failed, no, it's okay.
No, the first 5 seconds didn't really count because I was reacting to the timer,
No, it's all good. That was a great answer because you're right about how complicated the music industry is, especially in terms of royalties. Like everything's very opaque and a lot of things are very delayed. You upload your song to DistroKid or whatever. A lot of artists don't even realize that there's another 15-20% of their royalties just in going on registering with a PRO, registering with a song trust or their mechanical rights site. And then on top of that, they don't understand how streaming services even pay, right? You're constantly fighting the swath of misinformation on threads, as I am. And it's a lot of people. I've seen people say outright that streaming services pay a flat rate per stream when they don't, right? Not a single one does, to my knowledge.
Yeah, it's I appreciate you for fighting the good fight too. I'm really happy to finally be on your show because you hold us to account plenty, and you've got a lot of fair criticisms for Spotify over the years that I always like to listen to. But you also really are engaging online in good faith and not just going for clicks, but making sure people actually know what they're talking about. So I appreciate you. Yeah, one of the biggest pieces of misinformation that I see online every day is people really believing that there's a fixed per stream rate paid out on each platform. Spotify doesn't pay out that way. No streaming service pays out that way. And it's a great example of how artists can, see something online over and over, think it's true without really getting into the details and understanding it themselves. And there's lots of really important decisions you're going to make about which platforms you want to promote your music on and how you should analyze your royalty statements from each platform that you're going to get completely incorrect if you think there's a fixed per stream rate. So yeah, always a good place to start off the conversation because that's one of the biggest pieces of misinformation out there.
And I want to start off with talking about Loud and Clear because that is, you just gave the Loud and Clear briefing for the 2025 stats. And there was a ton of information. I was typing the whole time, just writing down info so that when I film my video for later in the week when the embargo's up, I'm ready, right? So there's a ton of cool stats, and I have my own favorite. But what was your favorite stat from this year's Loud and Clear?
Yeah, for your viewers who don't know, Loud and Clear is our annual royalty report. We're the only streaming service that does anything like this. We've been doing it for 5 or 6 years. Every year in March, we take all the royalty data from the year before and publish on our site exactly how many artists are generating each amount of revenue from Spotify, from $1,000 to $100,000 to $1 million to $10 million. We've been publishing that with full transparency and accountability every year since we started doing this. And I think it's really important for artists to know what the revenue opportunity on each platform is. So that's why we do it. And then we have an amazing team of data scientists who dig through the data and kind of pull out some of the most interesting trends and takeaways that we publish on our site. So if you don't mind, maybe I'll give you like my top 3 because it's hard to pick one.
Yeah.
And they all have to do with kind of the artist ecosystem growth. You hear a lot about superstars on Spotify, and there's some really cool numbers about how well superstars are doing in streaming. But the story of Spotify is really one about emerging artists and indie artists and a full global ecosystem finding success. So the first one I love from this year is we take a look at the 100,000th highest earning artist. So if you stack ranked every artist on Spotify based on royalties generated, get down to number 100,000. In 2025, that artist generated $7,300. And that's up from $350 10 years ago. So that's a 20x increase in just 10 years. And the majority of artists earning money on Spotify are outside the US, $7,300 in local currency. It's really starting to get to be a material amount. And, in the CD era, even in the biggest record store, you wouldn't have $100,000 with a CD on the shelf, right? You maybe had a few.
You won't have 100,000 artists on the shelf, period.
Yeah.
So what is there even a concept of the 100,000th artist ranking, in like 1997?
Right. $350 10 years ago on Spotify. It was like it didn't exist as a concept 20 years ago because you certainly didn't have 100,000 artists able to be on CD shelves. And so that's why I love that one. Second one along the same lines is looking at the $100,000 level. So this is where there's nearly 14,000 artists who generated $100,000 or more on Spotify last year. That's more than the number of artists who generated $50,000, half that amount 5 years ago. So it's a bit under 14,000 artists were making 50K or more on Spotify 5 years ago. Now that's how many are making 100K. So you're seeing this consistent growth year over year, and that's why we do Loud and Clear every year.
And that's just from Spotify too. So like I think I saw in a lot of the Loud and Clear stats at the bottom, there was some statement along the lines of typically artists will be making 3 to 4 times this from their overall like recorded royalties. So once you factor in all the other DSPs and then you factor in like physical media sales and other forms of like recorded music revenue, If you're making 100K on Spotify, you're probably making 300 to 400K overall.
That's right.
Which is kind of insane that there's 14,000 artists doing that.
That's right. And yeah, that's before non-recorded revenue as well. So, your concert, live events revenue, merch revenue, certain kinds of sync revenue, and so on. And yeah, that's just right. Spotify is about a third of global streaming royalties. So for all these numbers, you can triple them. And that's what you might be looking at across all streaming services. And kind of awesome to see. And the last takeaway I wanted to highlight is about the DIY segment. And DIY, do it yourself. We use that as shorthand for artists self-releasing through independent distributor like DistroKid or CD Baby or TuneCore and so on. And I think early days of streaming, people thought of that as like a niche path for artists. And what we're seeing is, especially on Spotify, it's more and more viable. Over a third of artists who are generating $10,000 or more, that's more than 80,000 artists at that level. More than a third of them are DIY or started as DIY, which is really cool to see. So you look at that $10,000 level, that's when, at least in the US, that's like starting to feel, material as a, part of your career. In other parts of the country, it's really significant. Over a third of the artists making that amount are DIY or start as DIY and then decide to sign to a label because of the success of the DIY channel. I think that's really exciting to see. 90% of DIY royalties go to artists who started before 2024. So these are DIY artists who have been going at it for a few years. They're not, one-off who just started. These are people who have, built a career over a number of years. And it's awesome to see that become such a kind of viable channel for artists who choose to go that path.
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked the breakdown of DIY versus indie, because the phrase indie music is kind of lost all meaning. Like, for example, on Billboard, I think the indie charts allows Disney to compete because they're technically an indie label, right? Yeah. So it's kind of silly. So I love the section, the DIY, because that is very different. Like, you can be in a pretty big label and still be considered independent, and you could be distributed through a major labels, indie distro like The Orchard is under Sony or AWAL or whatever. My favorite stat,
please,
it kind of blew my mind, is that if you could reach 1% of Spotify listeners and get 1% of their streams, you'll make $1 million a year.
Pretty crazy.
Which is crazy, and it makes sense. It's kind of like that, like a modern version of that 1,000 True Fans thing. Because I don't know if the math would actually pan out this way, but if you could reach 0.1% of Spotify listeners and get 10% of their streams, it'll probably break out to be roughly the same. Which is a cool stat, right? Because you don't need to be a Taylor Swift, you don't need to be a Drake or Ed Sheeran or whatever. You can be pretty obscure, and it's kind of shocking the amount of artists I'll work with where I see them booking a call with me, or I see them coming through my agency, and it's like I go to check out their music and they have 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify, and they have a song with like 300 million streams. I'm like, I've never even heard of this artist. And they're kind of huge, but like there's so many artists with like 1 million monthly listeners that you kind of forget that you really don't need to be everywhere or a household name to actually make it in the music industry. In fact, like the vast majority of artists who are successful are not household names. We one of the stats we shared that gets at that is, of those artists making $1 million or more a year just from Spotify, it's like 1,500, a bit over 1,500 artists. 80% of them didn't have a single song reach the top 50 charts last year on Spotify. Right. So if you think of those charts, that kind of encompasses anyone who was like, big at the Grammy or Brit Awards that, certainly you like be reading about in the Billboard chart recaps that we're having the biggest tours of the year. Right. You remove, 80% of those 1,500 plus artists didn't have a song reach the top 50. It's not about like a breakout viral song they had. It's about, that fan base they built over time. And that 1% of 1% meaning 1 million is really cool, because I think artists would think you kind of need like ubiquity to make $1 million a year from Spotify, that you'd have to be everywhere and have everyone know you. And that's at least how I would think about it. If I didn't know the data, I'd be like, $1 million is a ton. You must really have to be
one of those artists everybody knows. And what we're seeing is, as the royalty pool grows, 11 billion plus a year paid out by Spotify, 50% of that to indies. If you have that sustained fan base, if you have, that, set of folks who are seeking you out and listening to you, you can make real amounts of money. And maybe your goal is to then become a household name and, headline at Madison Square Garden, but maybe it's not. You can make a really good living with that kind of core fan base that is that, ride and die for your music.
I have I have a couple fun questions that I'll ask. But first, I want to talk about like what do you actually do at Spotify? So your official title that I found online is the Global Head of Marketing and Policy at Spotify for Artists, which is a mouthful.
Yeah.
But like, what does that actually mean? Like, obviously, you do stuff like this. You do the loud and clear briefing. But what do you actually do outside of that?
Yeah, this will be a useful clip to send my family because no one really understands what I do.
When I go to parties and people
title.
ask me what I do, it's like, I'm a YouTuber, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah, titles are never that helpful. I mean, the way I define my job is, my team's trying to do everything we can to set up artists and songwriters to succeed on Spotify. Specifically, we're working on all the products, resources, educational materials, policies that we offer to the music industry, whether that's artists, labels, publishers, songwriters, producers, anything Spotify's, providing to the music industry. My team's working on how can we help build that, make sure it's serving artists the most. How can we market that so they know what tools to use and, things like Spotify for Artists that I'm sure all your viewers know Spotify for Artists. And, that's a huge portion of what my team works on, kind of marketing and building those features through to educational materials, things like Loud and Clear and Made to be Found, if your viewers have seen that, where it breaks down discovery on Spotify, or education, our masterclass series, where we dive into things like playlisting or artificial streaming, songwriting, and how publishing works. So we build all those materials. And then on the policy side, we're trying to think about how can we make Spotify as fair and rewarding as possible to emerging and professional artists. So that's royalty policy, AI policy. We can get into issues around spam, artificial streaming, infringement, lots of really thorny stuff. So my team works on a kind of whole hodgepodge of stuff. The through line of it is we're really trying to help artists and songwriters and the industry get as much out of Spotify as they can.
Totally. Now, does that include the ever talked about online 1,000 stream threshold policy? Like, was that part of your team's initiative? Because I'll just let you talk about it. But that 1,000 stream policy, a lot of people were very upset about it online because they from their perspective, they were making something from their music, and then they weren't. And I've talked about it a few times on my channel, but I've had people come up with extreme cases where they're like, we have 100 songs that we've released over the years, we've never really been active, and we had 50 of our songs were getting 800 streams a year, so we're losing out on like $100 a year or something. But what is I guess, in your own words, what was that policy made for? And then what did that actually translate to on the back end of what problem did it solve?
Yeah. I mean, let me say first, I very much get where artists are coming from. Most of my family are in creative fields, and I'm talking to artists all the time. I know how hard it is to be a creative person on the internet today and in society today. And so, I think where a lot of artists are coming from is, they're trying to make a career in music. A platform like Spotify, makes a new policy like this and changes the way things work, and you got used to things one way. And, any sort of policy is going to, help some people and be harder for other people. And you're trying to weigh those trade-offs. And so I really get where anyone's coming from when they're asking questions about it or feeling upset about it. The principles of where the policy came from and what it's trying to do, I think is really aligned with what emerging and professional artists are looking to get out of Spotify, which is how can we make sure as much of the $11 billion that we pay out every year goes to emerging and professional artists. There's a whole wide range of aspects of our royalty system that was set up, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. We're approaching, this year is the 20th anniversary of Spotify. So a lot of our royalty rules were set up 20 years ago in a very different time. And for the first, decade and a half of Spotify, we really just wanted to focus on growth. How to just keep growing the royalty pool. Let's put all our focus on that. We were able to 10x from 2014. We're paying out $1 billion a year. Now we're paying 10x that, 10, 11 years later. At the same time, things that would be, little questions and inefficiencies in the royalty system. Once you're paying out 11 billion a year, they become, a lot bigger, and they really can impact how much money artists are making. So with the 1,000 stream kind of eligibility requirement, the way it works is, for each song that you release, you need 1,000 annual streams to be eligible for recorded royalties. There's over 100,000 songs released on Spotify every day. There's a lot of music out there. About 99.5% of streams go to songs with over 1,000 annual streams. 0.5% goes to songs under 1,000 streams. So, 10 years ago, when we're only paying out $1 billion a year, something that's about 0.5% of the royalty pool, maybe you wouldn't think about. Now 0.5 of the royalty pool is tens of millions of dollars a year. And what we have heard from distributors, what we see in our own data, is a ton of that money gets lost in the pipes. So on average, the songs that are below that 1,000 stream level generate 2 cents a month. So we're paying out 2 cents a month for tens of millions of tracks. And for any distributor, pretty much any distributor, there's minimums to withdraw the money or to take the money out, which makes sense because distributors take on a lot of infrastructure to be able to handle the finances. So you'll see anywhere from $2 to $25 to $50 even sometimes as the minimum to take money out of the distributor. And you'll see $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 fees, especially outside the US. The fees and minimums are way higher. So what was happening?
Or if you're using PayPal.
Yeah.
3.5% plus 30 cents or whatever. So
right.
If you're cashing out $6, it's kind of brutal.
Right. So you lose money on doing that. So, artists don't do it, which makes sense. So, tens of millions of dollars we're hearing from distributors, it's just sitting there. It's not reaching anyone. And so, we're trying to, think about how do we get ahead of things like AI technology generating mass uploads of songs. How do you try to, get ahead of wide troves of music being released online, and maybe a bunch of it is getting 50 streams, 5 streams, 150 streams, enough that it's below what might get noticed, but you're able to release enough of it that it adds up. That's the sort of thing where, whether it's bad actors trying to game the system that way, or just money that doesn't reach those levels, it's just sitting there in distributors. We saw this opportunity to modernize the royalty system alongside some other policies rolled out, take the tens of millions of dollars a year and use it to increase the payments to the other 99.5% of activity. And so one of the stats we are releasing this week with Loud and Clear is that 3.5 million artists reach that eligibility level of 1,000 streams, annual streams for a song. So it's a really accessible level for tons and tons and tons of artists. It's a huge number of artists.
How many artists are on Spotify, period? Do you know?
I think there's 12 million artist profiles. It might be more than that now.
About a quarter are have at least one song.
Yeah, I mean, a huge number of those profiles have 1 or 2 songs and never release again. But talking.
I have probably 10 music projects over the years, and only 4 of them have more than a couple hundred monthly. I think I have several that have 3 monthly listeners, because I just released music over the years and I never once promoted it. It was just a fun thing.
Yeah.
Before I started, actually trying to get people to listen to my music. So, I definitely get that. And I went to ADE a couple of years ago, which is a big music conference in Amsterdam. And I met someone who worked in the music industry, and he was a software dude. And he was explaining me this complicated automation system he made, where he uses some API to call this this AI music tool, And then he uses this other API to go make like artwork and stuff for it at scale, and then this other API integration to distribute it. So he was explaining how he's distributing like I think it was quite literally thousands of songs a month. And this was, I think, 3 years ago that he was walking through this. And so when I first heard of this policy, I was like, oh, that guy can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Because,
That's right.
On one hand, he's explaining, I'm like, oh, that's really like clever. Because he's talking about how he would make SEO things so that people would search something and find it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or he would use song names that matched popular artist song names. I'm like, that's actually really clever. I was like, that's kind of messed up because you're basically stealing money from actual artists. But that did actually solve that problem. And just like the fix for the white noise and functional music that happened like a year before that.
That's right. Yeah, as part of a set of policies, trying to tackle a lot of these set of schemes people have. Once you're paying out, $11 billion plus a year, there's such a big revenue opportunity on Spotify that people do try to game the system on the margins like that. It's tough because I totally get where an artist is coming from, where, you maybe like generate $1 on a song, but that's your dollar that you generated, and you want to be in a world where you get to have that. I totally get it. I think there's a reason most tech platforms kind of across industries have ended up with some sort of eligibility floor, because it's really tough to, especially in modern times with the sorts of AI tools out there, to allow anyone to monetize from day one from any level of activity. It's really important to us to keep it as accessible as possible. You release music on Spotify, everyone has the same chance of monetizing, same rules for everyone. Any song gets to 1,000 streams, it's going to be eligible. Still a pretty accessible floor, 3.5 million artists reaching it. Versus, in other fields outside of music, you often see way more restrictive floors until you can start earning. So we tried to really keep it accessible. That's one of like the great things about music streaming. But I totally get where artists are coming from when they're upset about it. And then I hope that as artists learn more about why we did it, they can come to understand, this isn't money that Spotify's keeping in any way. All of it's used to increase payments to the 3.5 million artists who are earning royalties. So it's tens of millions of dollars extra going to those artists, making more material amounts, who will actually get to see that money because they can withdraw it from their distributor, and keep it, use it to pay their rent, reinvest it in more music, right? Like those are the sorts of payments we're trying to increase. And sometimes the trade-offs can be really hard, but that's the principles behind why we did it.
Yeah, and on a similar note, there's a huge problem with AI music getting uploaded to all music streaming platforms now, and no one really knows how to handle it yet, just because it's so new. Deezer has been taking a lot of stances around AI music, right? They label it with an automatic system they have for flagging it, and they don't push it out in their algorithm. And I know some people, and ironically, most of them are artists who have AI music side projects, and some of them have hundreds of thousands of monthly listeners. And you see people on social media talk like they'll accidentally listen to an AI project, like it'll get recommended to them on radio, for example, and they're mad because they feel like they're being misled. And I feel like there has to be some system that comes into place. I know Spotify has something that they're working on with regards to manual declaration of AI use, but is there any consideration on, automatic detection, or how do you treat AI music differently in the algorithm so that there isn't like an unfair advantage for AI artists versus human artists?
Yeah. It's a great question. It feels like the issue of the decade for music and everyone to figure out. And it's one of our top focuses.
So I hope you enjoyed the first half of my chat with Sam. If you want to see the rest, if you're seeing this on the day the podcast goes out, that's going to be coming out tomorrow, and we'll add a link in the description going to that video once it's live, just so you can find the full thing.
I haven't seen it yet either, so I'm very excited to watch it.
It's badass. So I found this article on Billboard Pro. They have like a subscription thing where you can get music industry stuff. And this article was that artist and label service consultants are multiplying rapidly. How do you know they're legit? And the subtitle is, when it comes to choosing professional sport, the careers, independent artists are spoiled for choice. Here's what they should look for. All of us have like service-based companies for artists and labels, and Maddie's company is specifically called like a label services company. And so we're all kind of part of this, I guess.
But we were here first. We were the OGs. All these newbies, get out of here.
So I thought it'd be a good discussion to like specifically one talk about like what are these businesses, but then also like how do you know what is a legit company and what's not, other than the fact you should only trust the four of us and nobody else, right? Aside from that obvious truth. Like what are the red flags you see in a company that's obviously a scam, and what are some things you should go and look for to see like who are the real players in the space?
Right out the gate, I can tell you this. If they're promising the world, it's never going to happen. There's no guarantee in any of this. That's the number one thing I tell people to look out for. And I tell people, you should talk to multiple people. Don't just talk to me. I give them people that I trust. Go talk to these people, because every company, every person that is doing this label services thing isn't going to necessarily work in every genre. I hate EDM. I cannot stand it. I don't want to work it. I will give it all away to everyone.
Well, hold on.
I know.
we just heard everybody click off.
Apologies. But like that's the point, right? I'm going to do better in an area that I understand better. Pop, rock, indie. Those are my specialties. I know you guys do good where you guys do, and that's part of it. It's about knowing who you're looking at, what you're actually getting from that, and where are you in your career, right? Do you need a full team? Do you need someone to just kind of help guide you a little bit? That might be it. Are you really ready for a full marketing campaign? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Do you even have the finances to do a legit marketing campaign? Or are you just chasing streams or numbers? So I think there's a lot that needs to be part of the conversation before you even get to like really looking at people and who you want to work with. But just my insight on it. Also, Dustin, did you see who the article was written by?
No.
Gilbert.
Jay Gilbert?
Oh, did he write it? Of course he did.
Of course he did. I know.
That means hopefully we were. Although didn't you say most of the companies he talked about aren't even like at our level of the marketing services, or really like label services distribution? Because they mentioned 30 Tigers, Secretly. Who else does it mention?
I have it pulled up, but I can't. I'm scrolling and I can't find it.
Okay, so there's a few layers I think I want to clarify for people listening who might be confused. Maddie, can you give us the definition of a label services company versus what it frequently looks like?
Ooh, that's a good question. A label, I use label services as a catch-all phrase, right? So we do everything from helping people with distribution to, I would say, light management sometimes. I'm not a manager by any means, but I do have people that I work with that are managers that sometimes I bring in to help consult on projects. Marketing, it can kind of catch everything versus, what was the other part of the question?
What does it actually look like in practice for most people?
Oh, what does it look most people, most people don't need it all. Most people really need, I would say, someone consulting and just helping guide them until they're at that level of, hey, we've done this enough where, I need a marketing team. Okay, great. But not only do I need a marketing team, I need someone to kind of lead because I don't necessarily have management yet and I don't really know what I'm doing. So you need a project manager. I find that most of my work comes from project management. Do I do these other things? Absolutely. But I do more project management than anything else, which means I kind of control the teams that are working with under the belt of who we're working with. Does that make sense?
My understanding of what an artist label services company is it's basically like it's a label that's for hire to do the services a label would do, but they're not like fronting the cash for the releases. They're not signing. So it's like all the things a label would need, but at hire instead of at exchange of ownership. And then like basically what would make like us be like ad agencies or social media agencies, that basically like an artist and label services company is like, it has that, but it's usually like multiple of those things at once. So the implication is that it's not just an ad agency. It may be like they're an ad agency and they do the social media agency and maybe they have a PR thing and they, right? Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. It's a label that you can hire.
I will say one thing, and I think most of the mismatches and problems that artists and their teams have with hiring companies like ours or label services is not really understand, like they get what you're saying, but they don't really know what a label does. So oftentimes they will go through these label services companies and think that they're going to get a certain set of services. Maybe they think they're getting advertising or content creation, and then when they don't get them, they go, well, what are we paying for? Like, I get a lot of phone calls like, hey, we're working with this person, we're paying them this, but they're only just project managing, but we need help with this, right? So there's a practical element of this that is also kind of a struggle, that I think that's where our artists spend a lot of money. Like, we're spending thousands of dollars, but we're not getting a whole lot of help. And Matt, you mentioned in our last segment about doing campaigns, putting campaigns together and then handing them off to not get executed. I think that's what happens a lot of these label services. They put together these campaigns and then they give it to a team that's never done that, the execution side of it. So then nothing actually happens, or it's executed poorly, and then they blame the label services when the label services company probably did a great job at doing that part of it. That's honestly, and I don't know about you guys, but that's why we get a lot of work. Like, I think 30 Tigers was one that's mentioned in that article, Andrew. We get a lot of work from 30 Tigers because we do very executable work that they don't do, and they make the artist hire us because they know that they will fail. Like, it will go poorly if they don't have somebody executing it as well.
I think you nailed that, Dustin. I think execution is key, and I think a lot of these companies don't realize, or a lot of these artists that are hiring these companies do not realize what they're actually hiring them for. You know?
Yeah, they just think make things go, and it doesn't really it doesn't work that way.
But I also think that's like, especially for artists who've never been like in it. Where like, even if you're a moderately hot band worth 300 tickets a night, that is a 60-hour-a-week job, and you're gonna get like, anytime I've like fully managed a band like that, like I was calling that person a couple times a day, every day, you know, and it's like, that is what it takes, but that's also like a very expensive service to get, you know. And I think the follow-up on that, oh god, this is bad, but the follow-up on that is like,
don't get us canceled.
We are all here because we're passionate about music, and if you're a project that's like actually interesting to work on, then you're gonna get a lot more love. And if you're a project that just treats someone as like, whatever, this Maddie lady just gives us distro and like connects us to our ad agency, like, then you're gonna be like, okay, bro, sure.
Oh yeah, I always tell artists that I don't want to work with you if I'm gonna work harder than you, and I can tell that real quick. If I'm the hardest person working in the room, it's never gonna work. So go. I don't have time. But you're 100% right.
It's hard sometimes when the music's good, when it's really good. Like, we've all done this thing where we're like, oh my god, this is amazing, and then you meet them and you're like, I'm gonna ignore all these red flags, and in your head you think the music is so good I can ignore these red flags, but it never works.
Never.
You know, it never, no matter how good the music is, when the artist isn't doing it,
Thank
it just
you for
doesn't
highlighting
work.
large portions of my 20s, Dustin.
I feel like, as somebody who works in music, that is like the skill set you never anticipated learning, is figuring out who to work with, right? You're like, oh, I can invest years into this artist and waste my time because they will never fight harder than I'm fighting.
It's even worse when it's the other way around, when like you find an artist who has the work ethic and everything's put together except the music.
That's
well, but that's
like, that's even worse, because it's like, man, like if your music was there, it's like you would be unstoppable. But it's like the music's just and almost that's almost an easier problem to fix. I mean, like the music has to be good, but like if someone has great music and they're not willing to do anything about it, it's like it kind of doesn't matter, unfortunately.
I will say that to me, I used to think there was no solution to that. And then I figured out that if you have an artist who's working their ass off, the thing that they actually have to do is write 4 songs a day. If you sit them down and you force them to write, if they force themselves to write 4 songs a day, they will eventually write a hit song. And I've seen that work. The best managers I know, that's the first piece of advice they give to artists.
Yes. I mean, well, like anytime you talk
music.
to a Grammy-winning songwriter about songwriting, I feel like that's like that's usually the first thing they say is I just write every day.
Yeah. Just, you got to write every day. And when an artist is like, oh, that's a lot, I'm like, then you're never, that's how I knew I couldn't be a musician. I couldn't write a song every day. I just couldn't. And I just realized it doesn't make sense.
But red flags, or for people hiring companies like this.
Well, I've got a list of scammers. I'm going to go ahead and start listing.
How
to get sued immediately.
we all kind of know who the scammers are, and we're not going to say names because like it's hard to know for sure, and we don't want to get sued and or murdered in the street. So, because like, if you're the person who's going to like scam artists, you're not a good person, right? So we don't want to piss those people off. At the same time, so that being said, if any of you are talking to one of us one-to-one, a lot of us will just straight up tell you not to work with someone if you ask us. So keep that in mind.
The real thing is that if you're talking to somebody and you say, who did you work with? Go and DM those artists. They will tell you what's up. Like, even if it's like good work, they'll be like, yeah, that guy was great. Or yeah, it was great, but it didn't get me numbers. Or he was great, but his face was meh. Artists are very honest with other artists. So all you have to do is message the artists. Or message us. Honestly, if you DM me and you're like, is this dude legit? I will tell you. At least my opinion, for whatever it's worth.
So the first thing Maddie said was when we started the segment was like, if they're promising the world.
Yeah.
And so, like, what are some of the crazy things you guys have seen sketchy companies promise?
1 million streams for $5,000 is one that I see all the time.
Really?
Oh my God.
A very specific answer.
I see that and I go, okay. I see, I'm going to get in so much trouble for saying this. I see radio people all the time tell me you're going to get charted. Yeah, you'll chart, sure. You're going to get a bunch of overnight spins, though. And that's part of the game, and you have to play the game, but it is part of the thing. What else? Pay me X amount of money, and I'll get your music everywhere. You're going to be on Grey's Anatomy and all this stuff. That's not how it works. Sync is very hard to get into. If you do well in sync, you'll do well in sync, but it takes time, and most of the people that do well in sync write for sync. What else have I seen? Yeah. I think those are the big ones that I see regularly. There are other ones that I do see, but those are the big ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fixed number, like the oddly specific number of streams for a dollar amount. Like, there's ways you can kind of estimate things, but especially if the number is a profitable number, like pay $100 to get 100,000 streams. If you're going to make money off of that, that's and it sounds like I've had a lot of people tell me, like, why would I ever hire you to run this like ad campaign? There's like very little chance it will immediately profit month over month from the campaign. And like, I saw this other company, they're going to charge me $100 to get 100,000 streams. I'm going to make $200 off of that. It's like, because they're just running bots and you're not going to get paid anything off of it. And I've seen a shocking number of companies sell services like that, where it's like, it's a profitable number and they claim they're running meta ads or doing some other thing that's legitimate, but it's like absurdly too good to be true.
There was once a company, they still might exist, or at least this strategy, where their strategy, instead of like running ads on Meta, let's say, or I think they would run them on Meta, but the idea was to force 31-second streams through app advertising. So and it can force profitability that way, and streams, where you can guarantee streams because they know, hey, to force this many ads with this many forced streams, it costs this amount of dollars. And so they would do this, and I remember it getting thrown in my face. They're like, see, we got this many streams, we only paid this, and then those people would come back later and be like, yeah, like when those campaigns were over, It just went back right where it was before. And I think, to me, that's another really big indicator of a company who knows what they're doing and a company that's not worth their salt, is that, like, if you look at your Spotify graph and you have a campaign and it goes right here, and then the campaign's over and it goes all the way back down, then the people you hired have not done marketing. They just got your numbers. Could be bots. It could be what I talked about, where it was real human beings. But marketing is the value of the valley, not the peak. And so if it goes up and then comes down halfway, that's a win. That is, if you go to 80,000 monthly listeners from 5 and then land in 40, that's a win. Yeah. So the valley is what you want. And if the valley hits back to square one, then those people who, whatever work they did not actually provide any value.
There's like marketing things you can do that'll be temporary, but it's like usually you're running those with the expectation that they're temporary. Like, for example, if you run like an ad campaign, there's usually a massive tail, and that's when you would expect that, like, go up to 80, fall down to 40 kind of thing. If you're paying people to get on Spotify playlists, you're probably going to let's say you're at 1,000, you shoot up to 20,000, you're going to fall back down to like 1,100, 1,200, something like that. You're going to keep like 1% of what you gained and lose the rest because, like, of the nature of you pay to get thrown at slot 27 in this playlist, and you're going to get the stream from real people on it, but you didn't really like actually gain any fans whatsoever. You just get added to a passive listening thing. So it's like real, but it has a very limited like value proposition. The value proposition isn't gain fans. The value proposition is like inflate your numbers for some reason or some other kind of hacky algorithmic boosting thing.
But Andrew,
it's not like a fan.
Go ahead, Matt.
No, and I think the important thing to remember is that, like, smart people see through that very quickly. Because what we started the show with, this idea of like, well, we're not booking people based off virality anymore, right? So, like, you can go in with 500,000 Spotify monthlies, but, you know, obviously you'll trick some people. But some promoters will be like, okay, like, show me your show history.
Yeah, I'll tell you that a promoter is going to be vastly more impressed if you have 300 SMS signups in their market than if you've got 20,000 monthly listeners in their market. Like, that to them. And so these people that you hire, really what you want to be asking is, like, can they change the trajectory of my career? And, you know, I mean, there's a lot of questions, but to me, that's really it. And the trajectory sometimes is minuscule, sometimes it's higher. I mean, but there are some services, like going back to playlisting, I don't see any world that I would recommend doing a playlist campaign.
Thank you, I love you.
Because of that, what you just said, the 1%. Look, if I could retarget those people, and if you're looking at a 20% valley versus a 1% valley, then yeah, I think it's worthwhile. But the fact that you can't even retarget those people, passive is fine if you can retarget people, but you can't. It's dead end marketing. So if somebody's like, we're going to stick you in all these playlists and you're going to get all these streams, you know, it's like, well, what are you going to do? What then? Like, what after?
So I'd probably, if you look up like Spotify playlists and stuff, you'll find a bunch of videos of me basically like telling people why they shouldn't do Spotify playlisting. And so I'm pretty been like against Spotify playlisting, like go run ads instead. Despite that, my agency sells Spotify playlisting. And we like specifically tell people like run it, like if you're going to do playlisting, keep it to less than 20% of your streaming volume because you don't just want a bunch of fluff. And we drive people towards ads. That being said, we sell almost like the revenue from what we sell in playlisting services is way less than the revenue from ads. But since it's a lower priced product, like the volume is like kind of comparable to the number of orders. And so we get a lot of it. The reason why people get it, there's a few reasons. One is they want to just have their page not look like a joke. They want like some type of volume to happen.
That's fair.
And like we tell people, don't just run a playlisting thing in absence. Like I'll be like, if you're spending $3,000 in your song, maybe do like the $300 playlisting thing, and everything else go to ads. The problem is a lot of people don't listen to that. But the other one is I don't know, I'm guessing all of you had this, where an artist is like, every time we try to contact an artist to collaborate, a venue, a promoter to like open for whatever, we just get completely ignored. And when you look us up online, you see Spotify, 7 monthly listeners and less than 1,000 streams. And that is like a real thing, that it's hard to get any like initial opportunities if you look like a joke online. And then the last part is like trying to accelerate algorithmic stuff. There's a lot of like theories that I've tested and other people, where if you have a song that's popping off in the algorithm and you drop in some playlisting when it starts getting algorithmic spurts, it can push it further in Spotify's algorithmic playlists, but not too much. So those are all the 1% scenarios you're explaining.
But it's also just that thing of like, let's be honest, Andrew. 2 things. 1, I feel like artists' understanding of marketing is frequently about 3 years behind like what's actually working. You know, and I think a lot of people were told playlisting for a long time, so they just think that. And 2, you and I run very similar companies, and we both we've had conversations about how do we lower the barrier of entry to get people to come do ad campaigns with us. Do you know what's a lower barrier of entry than an ad campaign where you need some vertical video content?
Playlisting.
And I think that's a big piece of it.
That's a big factor. Yeah, we debated only selling playlisting campaigns in bundles with ad campaigns because of that fact. But then we're like, people were asking us like, well, we're already running our ads and we just want to do this. And okay, we'll just like available. All the information's available. You know, I don't talk about playlisting. If you want to hire us for playlisting, at least you know I'm not going to take your money and run.
I like all your points. The building on the algorithm thing is kind of interesting because I've tested it a lot too. I have one client who's friends with this guy who owns an insanely large, like real playlist. And he was like, I'm going to put this song on it. And I'm like, sure, let's see what happens. And I'm saying like it doubled. It counted probably about 20,000, 25,000 new listeners in a couple of days. And I couldn't believe how little effect it had on the algorithm. And it made me feel like there are some protections the algorithm has in sudden bursts of streams, that the lack of consistency is part of it. But also, this was an artist that already had like 150,000 monthly listeners. If you're starting from 0, I kind of get this idea of like, I want to get on a few playlists and like at least get something on there, because it is embarrassing.
I think we're all overthinking this. You're supposed to
Probably. Welcome to the podcast, Maddie. No, sorry.
You are supposed to start somewhere as an artist. If I see that you have 100,000 streams and your monthlies are at 20,000, but you have 0 followers and nothing is going on everywhere else, you're not fooling anyone. I'm sorry.
It's so
you
true.
know, we can all play the game. I get it, but like, how much is it going to hurt you in the long run? That's my question. If it doesn't really hurt, maybe turn a blind eye to it. But if it does really hurt, or it has an effect enough that I can feel it,
and it does really hurt. That's the problem, right? Like,
I tell people before I work with them, if you're going to do a playlisting campaign, I really don't want anything to do with you. And the reason being,
damn. Woo!
Hey, Dustin, I learned that from you. So,
like, you don't say that publicly, but that's how you feel too. Kind of.
But the reality is, it hurts you. First of all, the metadata. Second of all, if your song gets taken down, what's more embarrassing?
Explain the metadata thing.
Oh, the metadata. If I'm on a hip hop playlist, I can even be on a playlist for the right genre, and a bunch of bots that are programmed to listen to all these different type of things. You're basically building an audience where the algorithm isn't going to know who wants to listen to you, because who's listening to you isn't who's listening to you.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Did I explain it in a good way?
And
okay, cool.
I just want to kind of double down on that. The scales fell from my eyes at the Damascus that was trying to get metal playlists, because that was a reference to Axe in the podcast. All my Christian listeners.
You've lost me entirely.
My
but go on.
Came when with heavy metal playlists, where like metal is like a very fractalized genre, You know, Andrew and I both listen to metal, but we like 90% different things. You know, and I think what you see very clearly in metal that you.
I'm wearing a Gut Gent
and I'm like
t-shirt, right?
Okay, buddy. But you know, but it was this thing of like, so metal is very fractalized, so it's very easy to see. But it's like if you just get on a general metal playlist, then you're similar artists on Spotify. Completely wrong. Like, like you need to be.
Yeah.
Well, that's where the 20% rule typically comes in. It's like you don't want to do it, and then all of a sudden you have 70% of your streams coming from it. Ideally, it'd be like 10% or something. And so there's all these caveats to it, and that's like the weird, like, if you know it's legit and it's real people, and it's authentic, and you use it right. Like I've seen so many cases. For example, most of the biggest songs I've worked on, there was a playlisting component to their ad campaign. But it was done in a certain way legitimately.
But also, here's the other thing to think about as we have to close out this segment, which I think started talking about why label service companies are scams.
No, but like how to what to
but,
watch
like,
out
but
for.
I just want to finish on the playlisting thing. Last thought. We talked about this a few weeks ago, but Spotify AI DJ is going to replace all those curated playlists, in my opinion, because I think that a lot of people, because a lot of the really big curated playlists are Celtic pop punk. I used to work with a band that got a ton of streams off that playlist. Brave of the Sea, they're great, but they got a ton of streams off that Celtic pop punk playlist. But I guarantee you now that most people, instead of searching Celtic pop punk in the search bar, are slowly going to start doing the AI DJ. And if you're not building your algorithmic connections, then it doesn't matter that you're on this old playlist that they're trying to deprioritize. Like, they're still doing a lot to benefit smaller artists, and I actually think the AI DJ thing will help more smaller artists get more streams, but it's going away.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. We're trying to get this to go as far as it can go, so please start a conversation with a musician friend by sending it to them.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. If you're on YouTube, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our episode every Thursday. If you can rate us on Apple and Spotify, it helps us a ton. Tune in next week for more.